for lack of a better way to say it, I almost consider myself like an object more than like
Oh.
so I've said,
Mhm.
like, think of me like a table lamp. Like, you wouldn't look at a table lamp and think, is it a girl table lamp or is it a boy table lamp? Like, I don't want to objectify myself, but it's just that's
Mm.
not part of who I am.
Hello and welcome to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. We get curious about all things gender, sex, and sexuality, as well as relationships, feminism, the inclusive kind, mental health and kink, and all that makes us humans unique and diverse. From body positivity to body dysmorphia, it's all welcome here. If you like what we do and want to make a contribution, you can become a patron on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender or buy us a coffee. Links are on the website. Now, join us on a journey of inclusion, acceptance, and respect. I'm your host, Esther Lemons. I am a cis queer woman, and my pronouns are she and her. In this episode, I have a conversation with Jin Wicked, who is an artist, illustrator, podcaster, and writer on the autism spectrum. Jin's pronouns are they and them, and they are agender and non-binary. Find out what that means to Jin in this episode. We also talk about pushing boundaries, questioning what's normal, seeing the body as a canvas, finding beauty and art in everyday life, discovering being neurodivergent, integrating different identities, being present in the moment, and learning to be human. Please be aware that there is mention of cancer, depression, and death in this episode. It was recorded on the 22nd of July 2021. Now let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome. What's your name?
I am Jin Wicked.
Hello, Jin, and tell me about your gender experience.
I am agender.
And what does being agender mean to you?
For me, it means that for most of my life, which I've only recently completely recognized, that I don't really even see myself on the spectrum of gender. So it's something that I feel separate from entirely.
Mm. hmm What does that look like? Because I mean, or look like, or sound like, or smell like. You do know what I mean? Like all the senses.
Well,
But
I smell okay, I
that's
think.
cool.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
I'm
bathe
sure you
regularly,
do.
so
Yeah, I can't tell from here, but that's all right.
well, I suppose if I didn't smell all right, then that would be a good thing. You are very far away.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, because it's like for most people, obviously, if you say that kind of thing, like gender, what is that even? What does it even mean?
Right.
I think people be like, how can you not experience gender? Even though if they would think about what it means to them, it might also be a very interesting experience that I guess I recommend to that people explore and stuff. But I mean, how did that show up for you when you were younger? Is there maybe a moment that you can remember first thinking about that?
In a way, yeah, I kind of course as a child, especially I was born in 1980s, so this wasn't something that was brought up or really in the kind of the public consciousness so much. I just remember, like, as a child, people would say, you know, you can't do this because you're a girl, and I would get angry. You this, that, or the other thing, or girls don't do this. And as I got older, especially in the process of like dating and stuff, I would encounter men who are like, "Oh, you're this, that, and the other thing because you're a woman." And the whole time I'm kind of getting angry because, like, you can't tell me what to do because I'm a
Right?
woman. And like, I kind of realized more recently that it wasn't the fact. I mean, of course it was, but it wasn't exactly the fact that you're telling me I can't do this because I'm female or I'm a woman, but I'm actually getting pissed because you're calling me a woman and I don't really
Wow.
want to be called that. And so as a
Ah.
kid, I have the pictures of me when I was really small. I'm the oldest child. My parents dressed me up in little frilly dresses and, all of those things. And pretty much as soon as I was old enough to kind of make my own choices, I've always preferred kind of more androgynous clothing more styled after masculine styles, which in our culture tends to kind of mean androgynous. And so that's kind of it, and there's an instance of when I was in like the 3rd grade where, I auditioned for the Christmas play and there's an elf character named Sam. And I'm like, well, Sam can be a girl's name or a boy's name, right? And it's
Hmm.
always been played by a boy. And I show up, very confidently to audition for this part, and the female music teacher's like, well, I really appreciate your initiative here, but this
Oh,
part's going to be played by a boy. And I'm just like, yeah, no, this is not okay.
I know, right? Oh,
So, I've always been somebody that just kind of not so much intentionally pushed boundaries, but kind of questioned, like, why does this have to be the way it is? And so for me, I'm very small. And, even during the pandemic, wearing a mask and a hoodie and a giant coat, like, I still, like, get identified as female because of my
mm,
size. But for
mm,
me, it's just kind of been not deliberately androgynous, but just kind of trying to almost just be like a person, not really overly too much in one direction or another.
mm,
I tend to incorporate my artwork into my identity to a great deal. And so I've always, to some degree, considered my body as a canvas and part of my work.
oh,
So in that way, for lack of a better way to say it, I almost consider myself like an object more than like a,
oh,
so I've said,
mm,
like, think of me like a table lamp. Like, you wouldn't look at a table lamp and think, is it a girl table lamp or is it a boy table lamp? Like, I don't want to objectify myself, but it's just that's
mm.
not part of who I am. Um,
Yeah, that's
and
really interesting.
that's really the
Mm,
best way I can find to try to describe it to other people.
mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I also like what you were saying about you weren't pissed because people saw you as a woman perhaps, but more like, or like not from a feminist point of view, because I think as a feminist especially, you can be like, hey, you can't treat me like this, because that's very, it's like cliche, and I recognize a lot of my own responses in that. Like, you can't tell me I can't do
Right.
this because I'm a woman. But then, yeah, discovering why that pushes your buttons is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because for
Yeah,
some people, it might just
exactly.
be like like a rebelling against the patriarchy thing, but or is it like a gender identity thing? That's
Right, and that's
yeah.
what I kind of always assumed is like, well, I don't want you telling me I can't do this because I'm a woman, and to a degree that does annoy me, and that's a
Mm,
legitimate thing to be upset about.
mm,
But the reason this was making me like irrationally angry beyond,
mm,
you know, what I would maybe consider normal is because I'm actually like really angry and upset that you're calling me a woman because, not only are you telling me I can't do something or I shouldn't be doing something or I should be behaving a certain way because of what's in my pants, but
mm.
you're also like calling me something I don't even really identify with.
Wow.
So it's kind of like coming from both directions.
Yeah.
So for some reason that was just really always kind of sticking in my craw, and it took me a long time to really understand why.
Wow. That is such an interesting realization, though. Yeah.
It was, but it makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah, yeah. It's all about discovering who you are, I suppose, and the
Oh, for
journey and
sure.
yeah, journey in life and all that. Yeah. And I really liked what I read on your website. Your philosophy is life is art. And you talked a bit about your body being a canvas, perhaps. Yeah. Can you talk a bit more about that and how that fits in with your identity?
Um, well, I'm on the autism spectrum, and I've discovered that, kind of figured that out last fall.
Mm,
And one of the common traits of autism is difficulty in coming up with stories and fictions and things like that. My
Mm.
therapist had me do, as part of my evaluation, she gives me like a picture book and she's like, I want you to make up a story for the pictures in this book. And I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. And I look and I'm staring at the pictures and I realize I can't do this.
Mm.
And then I kind of started to understand why most of my work has always been autobiographical, because I have
Mm.
to have that nugget of reality or something that actually happened to work from. I can't just, make up a story like you can make up a movie or, a
Mm.
fiction. So I think as part of these feelings of alienation that I've always had, uh, I've spent a lot of my life kind of feeling out of sync with the rest of the world, very frustrated with my inability and difficulties connecting with other people and
Mm.
forming authentic kind of mutual relationships. And so, very early on, especially when I became a teenager and you start to feel loneliness in a more acute way,
Mm.
I started to use my art as a way to try to communicate emotions and ideas that I did not have the language to verbalize. As a
Mm.
consequence, I did a lot of self portraits because I didn't have the way or the language to try to tell somebody, this is how I'm feeling or this is where I'm at. So I
Mm.
would do these really complex, evolving self portraits, just trying to kind of be able to communicate my mental state to really anybody that would listen or was willing to listen or try to communicate with me. And
Mhm.
over time, that got to be very complex. And so my image internally and externally became really intertwined in that way. A lot of times when I see myself in my head, it's actually more in context of how I would draw myself than necessarily how I look in real life.
Mm.
So I tend to see myself in terms of my work. So when I say life is art, there's kind of two meanings to that. One is my own life and how it is incorporated into my work. And the other is just kind of more of a general, I'm the kind of person that, finds really mundane things interesting and kind of just seeing the beauty in like everyday small things that people would take for granted, like a flower on the sidewalk growing through a crack or something like that,
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's really about both cultivating your own life as like a deliberate process, and kind of seeing the art in that. And then also
Mhm.
like just the art of everyday life that, like I said, people tend to overlook in the hustle and bustle and everybody's on their cell phone all the time and
Mm.
consuming Netflix and, like looking for the next distraction. And it's like I like to encourage people to kind of just slow down and kind of just look around them and just appreciate life for kind
Yeah.
of being what it is.
Mhm. Yeah, I really love that. Actually, that came up. I had therapy today, and it came up exactly this a similar subject. Actually, like seeing wonder and seeing magic in life just as it is, and in stuff that is maybe mundane, as you say. Yeah.
I do, and I can be a little much for people sometimes. My photographer friend that I've been hanging out with, I was helping him at an art fair last weekend, and he keeps thanking me for I show up with an ice chest full of sandwiches and drinks and stuff. He's like, "Oh my god, like you don't have to do all this." I'm like, "Stop," like like, I know I'm working, but, I'm just happy to be here, the sun's out and I'm helping my friend sell his work.
Mhm.
And, you're making me uncomfortable. Stop thanking me so much. But it's just nice to be able to just appreciate little things like that. That's really kind of the space that I live in is all the little I live in between the little details. I'm kind of known for my very intricate ink work.
Mhm.
I show up with a grape soda and I noticed him drinking like something from a purple can the day before. I didn't say anything about it, but when I went and bought drinks, I bought a grape soda and he's like, "Actually, it was blackberry water." I'm like, "Damn it." But that's me. Like I notice the little things and that's the
Mm.
space that I live in. So
Yeah, yeah, I like that. It's good to just stop and smell the roses, really, isn't it?
it really is,
Yeah.
literally. I love to
Mm.
take pictures of flowers.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So what's it been like discovering about being on the autistic spectrum?
A lot of light bulbs going off
Mm.
for lack of I guess a better metaphor. It's made a lot of things make sense. It's given me probably a sense of peace that I didn't have before
Mhm.
because especially when I was small, I've always had trouble controlling my mouth. And so so they don't like the term high functioning,
Mhm.
but in autism without cognitive impairment, rather than delayed language, one of the signs is someone who talks a lot very early. And that was me. Like by the time I
Mhm.
was 3, like you couldn't make me shut up. And so also because I have no filter and I just say whatever I'm thinking, my parents, especially my dad, didn't necessarily like that
Mhm.
because I was always the kid that wanted to sit at the adult table and like talk about politics and just really like didn't fit in with other kids.
Mm.
And so I would say things that adults did not like and my parents and there was a lot of physical punishment
Mm.
very much kind of bordering into this isn't spanking anymore, this is abuse. And for a long time, I did not understand why that happened because I was getting hit and whipped with, like a leather belt and such. And I
Mm.
didn't ever understand why.
Mm.
Like I never understood why. And my siblings didn't get treated as harshly as I did.
Wow.
I assume they're neurotypical. They're not as different as I am.
Mm.
And that continued as I got older. I had friends that I was thick as thieves with, and then just one day they would stop talking to me, and I never got an explanation. I never understood what I did.
Mm.
And that was a pattern that's repeated itself for a lot of my life. And so when I figured out that I'm on the spectrum and I started learning about what my blind spots are and understanding my impairments better, it gave me a sense of understanding I didn't have before. And for
Mm.
me, understanding has always been the most important part. Like, regardless of how someone has treated me, whether it's abusively or just they're a jerk or,
Mm.
whatever, if I can understand it, I can be okay with it. And so gaining that understanding really helped me finally let go of a lot of past trauma. It finally let me come to a place where I could kind of say, okay, I understand why this happened. I can let it go now. I can close a chapter on this and I can finally just move on.
Mm.
So it really gave me a sense of peace and understanding that I didn't have before. I've been looking for answers to all these questions, some of them for most of my conscious life. And
Mhm.
finally having those answers and feeling like I found what I was looking for, that was just an incredibly powerful experience. And then I
Mhm.
went through a short period of grieving, which I think is also very normal.
Mhm.
You get angry, you have to grieve. How might my life have been different if I had been diagnosed as a child, if I had gotten more help, if I had gotten ADHD medication when I was in school, when I was in high school, when I started struggling. I only went to community college for about 6 weeks before I quit going because I couldn't focus in class. And when I was just
Mhm.
completely on my own, there was nobody making me do things. I kind of just fell apart. Why have I had trouble keeping jobs for long periods of time? Friction with coworkers and certain bosses. So it made a lot of things make sense. I went through this grieving process. And then also now I have tools to explain to people, hey, sometimes I can get this way. When I do this, I need you to respond this way and I'll calm down. Or just give
Mhm.
me some, just give me some space. Or, you know, I can walk into a social situation and tell whoever I'm with, I don't know how to behave here. I don't know what's expected of me. So I need you to give me some instruction. I need you to help me here.
Mhm.
And so once you learn that, it also gives you those tools to like help you navigate things going forward.
Mm.
But it's been a overall just very good for me to finally kind of understand who I am, and kind of, like I said, just have those answers that I've been searching for all my life.
Mhm. That sounds like such a relief though, yeah.
It really was, and
Mm.
I've said it elsewhere, but one of the biggest hurdles for me, and this continues to be an issue, is that when you don't know you're on the spectrum, especially, some of my behaviors, though it's something I'm very consciously working on, but especially in the past, some of my behaviors can be very frustrating. And from an outside perspective, a lot of times it can look like I'm being difficult on purpose.
Mm.
Or, I've had an issue with people attributing malice to things where, I'm just kind of bumbling along, oblivious,
Yeah.
just trying to do the best I can and trying to understand what the heck is going on around me.
Mhm.
And so I may say something that offends somebody, and I'm not doing it to be offensive. I'm doing it because I'm just trying to say whatever it is I want to say, and I have a habit of sticking my foot in my mouth. I can say the best intentioned things in the worst way humanly possible. Like, I'm trying to compliment you and it sounds like an insult when it comes out of my mouth. How did this happen? Uh but people
Yeah.
will attribute people are very quick to attribute malice where there isn't any.
Mm.
And so over time that can kind of snowball, and then, so people build this mental image of you that just isn't really based in reality because I'm not
Mhm.
neurotypical. So,
Yeah.
you think you know why I do something? I can tell you you're probably wrong because
Yeah.
my internal thought processes are just like a ping pong ball bouncing around inside my head, and I'm making all these connections that you probably never even thought of. And so how I got from point A to point B, you probably don't know. And it's a
Mm.
bad idea to make an assumption. It's far better to just ask, because
Yeah.
I'm happy to explain myself all of the time.
Yeah, we
But
make so
that's
many assumptions, right? And people make so many assumptions and it's so misunderstood and it just shows like how bad we are at really communicating well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's fair, maybe, to some assumptions, are fair to make, but I
Mm.
think when you're dealing with neurodivergent people, you really need to be careful with that.
Mhm.
Because I don't think of things the same way. I don't necessarily have the full spectrum of no, I don't wanna say, like, I don't have the full spectrum of emotions, but, one thing that may be more unique to me is just, like, I'm not an envious or jealous person. I
Mm.
just don't tend to compare myself to other people at all. I'm always kind of in this very internal place where I'm dissecting myself and I'm comparing myself to who I was yesterday. So if you think I'm doing something out of jealousy, I can tell you right now out the gate. You're wrong because I just don't see myself that way, and I don't compare
Mm.
myself to other people. So
That
you
sounds
have
so
to.
healthy, though. You know,
It
really.
is,
Yeah.
it is. Like I'm not bragging or anything, but I it's like I'm not trying to say, like, "Oh, I'm not jealous," like, that makes me superior or something. I'm telling you that just jealousy isn't really part of my emotional vocabulary.
Hmm. Hmm.
Neither is envy. Like, I don't want what other people have. I actually
Hmm.
have almost everything I want already. So, so you have to be really careful with anybody that's kind of outside the spectrum of that's on that neurodivergent spectrum
Hmm.
because your thought processes and your motivations can be a lot more obtuse and opaque
Mm.
than they might be or someone might
Yeah.
expect. I
Yeah.
might have misused the word obtuse there, I'm not sure.
I don't know. I'm trying to think what it what
Did
it
I just call
means.
myself stupid? I don't know. I might have.
Ah, oh. You know what? I was just thinking about. I think when I just started exploring what gender was, I was thinking about it maybe as a sliding scale. But since then, I thought of it more as it's more three-dimensional than that, really, isn't it? It's more like a universe. And I was thinking if autism is a similar thing, because we talk about the spectrum of autism, and it's not just a clearly cut, defined thing, and there are sort of shades of it, if you will. Yeah, so I wonder if that is a more three-dimensional thing as well. I took one of those online tests the other day. I'm not saying that's super scientific or anything. Like, how likely are you to be on the autistic spectrum? And I was like, very likely, you know. And I've been thinking about some of the traits and stuff and looking back on my life thinking, oh, wait a minute. That
Right.
does explain a few things for me as well. And I think it's just a matter of it's like diversity, really. Neurodivergence is also diversity, and it's like I think we should stop seeing it as like a malfunction of something, you know.
Absolutely, and it is very much kind of a three-dimensional thing. I think probably one of the most misunderstood aspects of autism is that one, your functionality it can really depend on your circumstances and your
Hmm.
environment. So, for example, I am a custom picture framer by trade. I'm not doing that anymore, but I did for 20 years. So if you encountered me at my job, I would appear extremely articulate, very perceptive, and very socially competent
Hmm.
because I have had the experience to memorize all of these internal scripts of this is what I say in
Ah.
this scenario, this is what I say in that scenario. There are very clear boundaries in how I should interact with someone in that kind of environment. I am the sales clerk or designer or, worker. This is the customer. This is the client.
Mm.
So I have a very clear set of rules I abide by. And so I would appear very functional in that environment. I know what
Mm.
I'm doing. I'm very comfortable. If you put me in uncomfortable clothing and threw me into a dinner party with a bunch of high society people, I am going to appear like a bumbling idiot and look like a complete fish out of water. And that's true of neurotypical people too. And it's in a really extreme example,
Mm.
but you can strip that down to like a house party. I'm not comfortable in other people's houses.
Mm.
So if you send me to your neighbor's barbecue, I'm gonna look really awkward. I'm probably not gonna talk to people. I may find somewhere to sit and just camp out there until it's time to leave.
Yeah,
So
that
how
makes sense. I would be in the one room where no one else is making friends with a cat. So,
right, okay.
yeah.
So everybody's gonna react to these
Yeah,
situations differently. Well,
true.
when I'm very tired, if I'm not getting enough sleep, my ability to be social is going to rapidly deteriorate.
Mm.
If I'm upset about something, some days are just bad days.
Mhm.
So, especially with autism, your ability to function can vary from day to day. Your ability to handle a situation one day, maybe one thing, and then the next day you just can't deal with it. A problem for me is that I am intelligent. And so, because I am talented and I do art and I do videos and I write and I'm an
Mm.
okay writer, and I do all these things and I'm largely self taught. And so people look at me and they're like, wow, she's really smart or they're really smart. And they don't understand that just because I'm very competent in some areas, they don't understand how impaired I am in other ways.
Yeah.
And so that can be a difficult thing for people to deal with is like,
Mhm.
you know, yes, I can build a computer and, and install this hardware and build a website and do all this technical stuff, but I don't know how to talk to this guy I like, you know? So
Yeah.
they don't understand that competence in one area doesn't translate to another. And so
Yeah.
there's a statistic out there, don't quote me because it's been a while since I looked it up, but quote unquote high functioning autistic people have a suicide rate like 3 times the normal population, the neurotypical population.
Wow.
And and the thing with a cognitively impaired autism is that it's very visible.
Mhm.
So people can very readily see this person has these impairments.
Mhm.
And to some degree, someone with a cognitive impairment is less aware of their cognitive impairment.
Mhm.
And so when you aren't, you are very aware of how disconnected you are. So, I've persistently struggled with loneliness my whole life because one, I have these social impairments that until recently I didn't even understand what was happening.
Mhm.
And so I meet someone I like and I want to be friends and I make them angry at me and I don't understand
Mm.
why they're angry. And I'm going through life not really understanding why relationships are always falling apart around me and why I don't feel like I can form authentic mutual connections with people. And
Mhm.
I'm smart enough to understand that this is happening. And
Mhm.
so that can be incredibly isolating. And
Yeah, that makes sense.
depression
Yeah.
is really common,
Yeah.
comorbidity with autism. I
Yeah.
have OCD. I have major depressive disorders, quote,
Mhm.
severe. And so that's actually, the depression has been less of a problem since I've started to understand what's going on and find the people that are patient and understanding enough to make a
Yeah.
little more accommodation for me and to give me a little more leeway.
And
And
obviously
they're out
because
there.
you've been able to communicate that more as well. Like what you just said was like, okay, I'm feeling this way in this situation and what I need from you is this, you know?
Right. And
Yeah.
I've never had much of a filter, obviously, but it's made me much more deliberate and conscious of to just outright say like I don't deal well with ambiguity because when I feel like I'm getting some kind of mixed signals from somebody or like contradictory information, it kind of makes my brain short circuit because I don't know how
Mm,
to process that. So I need you to explain what's going on. Like I need you to very explicitly tell me what you're thinking or feeling, and I'll do the same. And
mhm.
honestly, probably the world would be a better place if everybody communicated like that,
You
right?
know what? The thing is, yes, absolutely, because I think we're so used to doing things in a certain way that directness, I mean, there's directness and there's directness, okay? I'm not
Right.
saying like it's always a really great idea, but yeah, we do beat around the bush a lot and we play a lot of games in communication. And I think if we were all a bit more direct or at least more aware, that would be such a good thing. Wow, for sure.
It would, like it's like it feels like most people, maybe not most, but enough. Let's not even get to communication yet. Let's just all like stop for a minute and think about what we're actually feeling rather than just,
Yeah,
pounding it down and pretending like everything is okay.
totally.
So I probably everybody could do with a little more self-reflection and more self-awareness.
Hmm.
But for me, I cannot do I'm not really dating anymore. I have to kind of be friends with somebody and get to know them on like more neutral ground before that can even happen. But
Hmm.
if there is somebody I'm interested in, I literally I have to say, like, "Look, I don't know how to do your little social dance. Uh,
Hmm.
I'm just gonna tell you that I'm interested and you can take it or leave it." And so
Yeah.
that's it. I said that, like, I know it's not the most, exciting thing, but that's just how I have to operate. I can't read between the lines. I can't pick
Mm.
up on those social cues necessarily, like,
Yeah, but maybe they're stupid to begin with. Do you know what I
they
mean?
d
Like, oh my
that
god.
that is,
Ah,
I don't wanna be negative, but,
however, yeah.
there's that whole quote, and I forget who it was originally attributed to, but it's like, "If you think you have depression, you should first check and see if you're not just surrounded by assholes."
Yeah,
And
right?
there's definitely an element of truth to that because,
Yeah.
I have because I didn't know better and because I didn't have the social tools and social skills to recognize when I was in situations that were bad for me. I found myself in like toxic social groups and
Mm,
similar situations. And it's like, I'm anxious all the time and I feel sick and I don't understand or I didn't understand that part of the
mm,
reason for that or a lot of the reason for that was because of how the people around me were treating me or
mm.
they weren't good people for me.
Yeah.
And so there is definitely an element of, some people are just mean or stupid. And unfortunately,
Mm,
one of the other traits of autism is something called mind blindness. So, this is the inability or difficulty with putting yourself in another person's position and being able to see things from their perspective. So,
mm.
you,
See, yeah, that's interesting though, because I feel like I guess whether you're on the autistic spectrum or not, or have some level of neurodivergence, there's also like you can be an empath, for example, which I consider myself to be. So I can very much tell what other people are feeling because I feel what they're feeling.
right.
And that's, I don't know how, I mean, is that something that you experience or from what you're saying, maybe not?
Oh, for sure. Like,
You do? Okay.
I'm extremely perceptive with like emotions, so
Right. Yeah.
and that can cause a problem for me too
Mm.
because I tend to see right through people um
Yeah. That's
in
the
a
thing. You just
way.
see through a load of bullshit, don't you?
Exactly, and
Yeah.
a lot of people don't like that.
Yeah.
So I can tell very quickly when somebody's being fake with me.
Hmm.
And then that's a lot of the times when I get my wires crossed because the energy I'm getting from them and their emotions I'm picking up are like in contradiction to their words and
Mhm.
their actions. And
Yeah.
so that really messes me up. And so now when I encounter somebody who gives me those vibes, I either confront them about it so we can get what they're feeling and what they're doing and saying on the same page.
Mhm.
And if they can't do that, then I have to just say, okay, I can't be around you because this I can't handle this. So
Yeah.
you have to be real with me or we can't spend time together because that that situation where I'm picking up one thing and you're doing something else on a more deliberate level, like I can't handle that.
No, again, that's so healthy though. And that to
It
me, that's
is.
a sign of healthy boundaries and really knowing yourself and what you need and what you want in
Yep.
connections with other people, you know?
And one of the problems that why I bring up mind blindness is because we always hear about negative projection, right? So somebody who is jealous of me because of the amount of attention I get or something, they're mad at me and they're maybe feeling embarrassed or shameful or whatever negative emotions they've got going on the inside, and they're
Mm.
accusing me of being jealous because that's how they feel.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
always hear about negative projection, but positive projection is a thing too, right? So,
Mm.
I tend to be a pretty forgiving and generous person.
Mhm.
And so have been like woefully unprepared for some of the nastier people that I've encountered over
Mm.
my life because because of that mind blindness, I tend to assume most people are kind of on the same page as me until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
And so that makes you very vulnerable to being taken advantage of or
Mm.
manipulated or lied to or misled.
Mhm.
And it makes you very naive. And there have been a lot of painful lessons involved in kind of, oh, like I didn't realize this or that person existed, like I didn't really understand narcissistic traits in other people and like,
Mm.
oh, so there's been a process, of kind of
Mhm.
having to learn how to see things from other people's perspective and
Yeah.
overcome that.
Yeah, yeah. One thing I was just thinking about as well, when you said about your job and being kind of very capable in a social way, but not because maybe you're responding in the moment, but because you had these you kind of trained yourself in responses, almost like I was just thinking of like Data from Star Trek,
Oh yeah,
you
I
know?
he's a
Yeah,
very I always kind of identified with that character, and that
yeah.
probably should have been a bigger warning sign or, like some kind of sign. Like it should have been like, why do I identify with this android? But actually I started looking into it because I had written something kind of about my own autistic traits that I had observed
Mm,
myself and how I interacted with the world. And apparently he is a very popular character in
mm,
autistic communities because of that exact reason,
mm,
that he
mhm,
has to make a very deliberate effort to kind of learn how to be human. And I I said that I had an early midlife crisis in 2014 and kind of was just like, who am I? What am I doing? Why am I not making
mm,
my art anymore? Who's this person I'm married to? How did I end up here? I'm not happy. I got to
mhm.
figure this out. I got to figure this out. And there are literally like drawings that I've done. There's one that says tend your garden that I'm like a little naked person, like sitting in the middle of a flower, looking at my own hands, like, holy shit, I'm a person.
Yeah.
So I've literally used the language of saying that I am learning to be human. And so
Wow.
it's very much like that. I have to learn, I have to train myself, for every new scenario I'm put in. These things do not come naturally to me.
Wow,
And
that
so,
that sounds really quite exhausting, and
it
in a
is.
way,
It really is.
yeah. And I was thinking about the whole. It's kind of a performance, then, isn't it? It
Very
kind of
much.
becomes a performance, and I consider, or like I consider, I've seen gender to be a performance. Like I think we all perform it to a degree, but also I think a lot of people who are afraid to come out also are, performing gender in a way that just keeps them safe or keeps them sane, or, oh god, there's so many levels to that. Wow.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
ultimately, it's all a social construct,
Yeah.
gender is different in different cultures. It's been
Hmm.
seen differently over the history of humanity. I mean, it's all a performance to some degree.
Hmm.
And so, I think people should be free to express themselves in whatever way feels right for them.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's it's all a performance, and I think probably the biggest revelation for me, or realization for me, um, was when I got my first computer at 17, right before I turned 18. I worked for like a year in a sporting goods store to pay for this thing. I was a cashier.
Hmm.
And it's this big, chunky laptop computer back in the days of AOL and dial-up modems.
Oh no.
I know, right? I'm dating myself here. Well, I already said when I was born, so.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm a very young 41, almost 42. Um,
Uh,
but, I got a computer and just kind of instantly took to it.
yeah.
And as soon as I got online, I started teaching myself to build websites and getting in chat rooms and talking to different people. And in some cases, like meeting strange people off the internet, which it's amazing I haven't been murdered, honestly. But around the end of high school and after I graduated, I was in such a place that I created Jin Wicked and started calling myself that. And there was
Hmm.
a period of time where I would get like really angry when people would call me by my quote unquote real name, or,
Hmm.
I had some person on the internet look up like the registration for my business and write an email to me using like the legal name off of that. And it's like, why are you doing this?
Mm.
Um, and so I my authentic self felt so alienated and rejected by everybody that I actually created another name and a whole separate identity to
Mm.
interface with the world. And it was just a really complex, elaborate form of autistic camouflaging.
Wow.
Um, that I figured out, oh, I put on all this makeup and wear these clothes and people like me. So I'm going to keep
Hmm.
doing this. But it's not really who I am. And so that was something I've written about a little bit previously. But when I figured out I was autistic and started understanding all this stuff, I also had a process of, well, I don't need Jin Wicked anymore. So who am I really?
Mm.
And so I kind of, as part of that grieving process I mentioned earlier, I also kind of needed to just be with myself for a while so that I felt like I could kind of integrate both those sides of myself.
Mm.
That now when I use the name Jen Wicked, I'm using it because I feel like my authentic self and that part of me have merged.
Ah.
There's no separation anymore. And so
Mm.
like people will sometimes ask me, they're like, should I call you Jen or Jen, or what do you like, whatever makes you happy. I'm not picky. Just don't
Mm.
call me mean names, I guess. Like I really wouldn't even care if you did that, honestly, but I'm used to it now. But
Wow. Yeah.
so
Mm.
there was a process of that because it was like, well, I don't need this anymore. I understand why I've been doing this the last 20 years. And so now what? Now what?
Mm.
I could probably disappear tomorrow and nobody would ever hear from me again and just, kind of write poetry and draw occasionally in obscurity. And honestly, it wouldn't bother me too much.
Mhm.
So I had to kind of rediscover a new motivation for doing what I'm doing and rekindle my drive to create and just sort of recalibrate everything in light of that.
Wow, it sounds like you've really done a lot of work to just integrate all these facets of you.
Yeah, I mean it's a difficult process, but it's been a really rewarding process. And
Mm.
for the last 5, 6 years have been like the hardest years of my life. I just
Mm.
every time it feels like I've made some progress and gotten back on my feet, something comes along and kind of kicks my feet out from under me again.
Mm.
And it's been trying and it hasn't been easy, I won't lie. But, at the end of the day, yeah, no matter what else happens or what's going on in my life, for the first time in my life, I feel like I know who I am. For the first
Mm.
time in my life, I feel like a whole person, not a bunch of fragments being kind of held together by duct tape and Elmer's glue
Wow. Yeah.
and school paste.
Mhm.
Um and so, I feel good. I feel better than I've ever felt in my life. And on a certain level, nobody can take that away from me. So,
Mhm.
whatever else happens or whatever setbacks come my way, I've got something that I've been searching for my whole life. And like nobody can take that from me. So it's
Mhm.
a good place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how long ago is it that you embraced the label you already mentioned, agender, and you also mentioned non-binary?
Yeah, I
So, is that fairly recent, or has that been part of you for a while?
it's been part of me in the sense that, as I mentioned, I've never liked being called a
Mm.
woman or a girl, but as far as consciously recognizing it,
Yeah.
so they recommend it. I have a very high family risk of breast cancer, and it was recommended that I start getting regular mammograms at age 40, which I
Mm.
had intended to do at the beginning of last year, but then COVID happened
Mm.
and everything shut down. And so it wasn't until last fall that I finally got in and had my first mammogram. And they found a little benign, they found a little lump. And so I got to do the whole mammogram, biopsy, ultrasound, follow-up mammogram, and I
Mm.
sat down with a specialist and they asked me about my family history. And so I've got like this 40% something family risk of breast cancer. My mother passed away from breast cancer at age 59. It metastasized to her bone marrow. That's what killed her. I was her caregiver for the last few months of her life. So
Wow. Yeah.
I was very intimately involved in watching her decline and
Hmm.
her death. And so this was actually something that kind of haunted me for a long time. And as I'm talking to the doctors and nurses about this, I said, I really want a double mastectomy. And they're like, you don't have to do anything that drastic. There are other options. Well,
Mm.
they want me to do monitoring every 6 months, like alternating mammograms and ultrasounds, I think it was.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I'm not doing that, right? I'm not going to the doctor every 6 months. And they put this little metal chip in the lump that they found so they would know that they found it. And now I'm like weirded out because there's this little piece of metal in me.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is bothering me. Like, you understand, like, I'm autistic, right? This is bothering me. I want to dig it out with a fork. Uh, this isn't good, right?
Ah, no.
And I'm like, I don't, like, I really don't care about looking like a woman. this isn't a big deal to me. So can we just
Mm.
get rid of them so I don't have to live with this anxiety anymore?
Mm.
On paper, it's theoretically possible to still get breast cancer after having a complete double mastectomy,
Mhm.
but I don't think there's any instances of it ever actually happening in real life.
Mm.
It's more of just like a statistical thing.
Mhm.
So I said, I just want them gone, please, please. And I'm going through, I have to navigate every level. So I have to tell nurse, like, I just want them gone. Okay. So then I tell the ultrasound specialist and the radiologist, like, I just want them gone. And then I'm telling the next one, I just want them gone. And I'm
Mm.
just going through all the hierarchy of medical professionals until I get to the surgeon. Like, please just, I want them gone. I don't
Mm.
want nipples. I don't want any of that. Just get rid of it, all of it. Just bye, bye, gone.
Mm.
And so finally, I got what I wanted. And on February 11th, I had a double mastectomy. That was this year.
Mhm.
And I was listening to the episode you recommended me, and of course, like I turn it on, and like the first thing I hear is like the same exact words that I told you before when we
Mm.
we chatted before this recording. Is that I really was not prepared for the moment when I got home from my surgery and I was recovered enough to look at myself in the mirror. And especially a couple of days later, when I finally unwound all the huge ace bandage from around me and
Mm.
saw my flat chest and just kind of standing there looking in the mirror saying, "Oh, hey, it's me. There you are."
Wow.
And that was the same exact, like, I'm hearing my words coming out of someone else's mouth. I
Yeah.
really was not prepared for that.
Mm.
It was almost like a feeling of euphoria. Just
Mm.
it's me.
Yeah. Which was the episode with Lawrence, in case anyone would like to give that a listen as well.
My ex-boyfriend, he still lives with me right now, and I'm walking around in just like boxer shorts all the time. And he said, "Are you just gonna walk around with no shirt on all the time now?" And I said, "You've been doing this your whole life. Let me have this."
Right?
Right? But I
Ah,
just I just feel so free. Just I never understood like how much it was almost weighing me down. And I've never liked dresses, but I even bought a couple of little dresses that are like have the huge plunging neckline so you can see a little bit of my scar and like how flat my chest is. And suddenly even the dress doesn't feel that weird. It's like
isn't
the
that interesting?
it is
Yeah.
really interesting because there's still like I wouldn't wear just any dress, and I've never
Mhm.
liked wearing dresses, but these particular couple of pieces of clothing that I bought that may seem obviously more performatively feminine, but because of the way the neckline is designed and the way it's cut, it kind of embraces the fact that my chest is flat, and I feel really comfortable in it.
Mm.
And that was an interesting experience. But it's recent that I really understood that this femininity, that this element of kind of gender was just not part of who I am, that I'm more of like a mannequin or something. I just, I don't,
Yeah.
I'm just, it's just not part of me. And clothing is just clothing.
Mm.
So I do like makeup. I don't wear a lot of it anymore. And I don't really enjoy the really heavy makeup that I used to wear more commonly, but
Mhm.
I still wear a little bit of makeup and such like that, but
Yeah.
actually formally recognizing it, I would say probably came in the weeks following my surgery this year. So
Mhm.
for the first couple months, I was like, well, I guess I'm still she, and then I
Mm.
started to kind of bristle at that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I kind of said like I'm fine with either, and then I got an email from somebody the other day that was talking about me in the third person, and they had written, like, she and her through the whole thing, and I found, like, I
Mm.
was getting really angry as I was reading
Ah,
it. So, like, okay, maybe I don't actually like this.
yeah.
Yeah, so it was a process, but that part of
Mm.
it is very recent, and, I
Mm.
don't really know where I would be if I hadn't had that surgery.
Mm.
I might have just stayed in that kind of frustrated place forever. I don't really know. There's no way to know, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It sounds like you've found or grown into more of who you are now. It's very much an evolution, isn't it? And then
Oh,
you
yeah.
express that accordingly. So, as you say, you don't feel like wearing much makeup anymore, and that's just the way you feel, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
I look a little bit like a 12-year-old boy, I guess. I can actually I'm small enough that I can actually, like, buy large clothing from the children's department. So that's how small I am. Very small, very small.
Wow.
Um, but,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a process, but it's a good process, and it's
Yeah.
a necessary process, I think, if you wanna feel real.
Mm.
I finished a drawing of myself. My photographer friend that I mentioned before, I found this shirt in December because, of course, I knew I was gonna have this surgery in advance, and I
Mhm.
found this shirt that's kind of a hippie looking thing with a really low plunging neckline, so you can see the scar. And
Mhm.
there was this straw top hat that I've wanted for like 5 years, and I bought it with a little bit of the Biden bucks that they sent over Christmas. I said, I never buy myself nice things, other than, like, work-related stuff, and,
Mhm.
I've wanted this for a long time, and I wanna do these pictures with this shirt, and this hat would go perfect, so I bought myself this straw top hat, and I told my friend, "Can you take pictures of me?" And so he did, and I did a piece of artwork that was wearing the same outfit, so I had these pictures of me at this local park that I it's a place I spend a lot of time and I really love, and it's important to me, and he took
Mhm.
these pictures of me in this park, and I did this artwork that was an artistic version of the same thing, and, um, I wrote on one of the work in progress photos that I posted, I'm like, "Is this self-actualization?" Like,
Mm.
like, I feel like a whole person for the first time in my life. I feel present when I'm with people. Um, when people talk, I hear the things they're saying. They don't just kind of ADHD medications done wonders for that, but I hear when
Yeah.
people talk to me. I remember the things people say to me,
Mm.
and it's like helping him at his art show. I mean, yes, technically I'm working, but I don't think he or a lot of people can appreciate just what it is for me to kind of just be there quietly with somebody and very
Mhm.
present in the moment. And I'm feeling the wind on my face and the sunshine on my arms, and there's grass under my feet. And I'm
Mhm.
here, I'm alive. And I've never really had that before. And I'm still kind of savoring that, I guess. I'm entering a kind of reclusive phase where I can tell I'm gonna hide out in my office a lot and produce a lot of artwork,
Yeah.
because I'm coming out of a more turbulent period, and
Mm.
now I'm gonna enter a more productive period. I can tell, I can feel it coming. It's already kind of manifesting.
Mm.
So yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, I just
Wow.
it
Yeah.
feels really great to be a person, let me tell you.
That's so cool. And it's so interesting what you said about being more of a whole person, even though you've removed part of yourself in a way,
Oh,
like
yeah, I suppose.
physically.
I
Yeah.
suppose.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's kind of like what you grow into, I think. I think it's maybe not what you grow into, but more of what is revealed when you get rid of all the crap that you're not. you
Oh,
know?
for sure.
Oh.
And some of it is, I'm sure, part of the normal process of aging.
Mm.
On its own, people tend to become happier as they age.
Yeah.
Another thing that had a deep effect on me, both my parents are gone. I am estranged from what little living family I still have, which isn't much.
Mhm.
And so I am a very solitary person. I don't have a lot of connections, so I tend to kind of
Mhm.
treasure the ones that I do make.
Mhm.
But for most of 2019, I was working as a home health aide or resident assistant in a couple of different assisted living facilities. So this involved taking care of people that, obviously need assistance. Sometimes that's just administering medications to make sure they take them. That could be
Mhm.
helping someone to take a shower, to use the toilet, to get dressed, taking them back and forth to meals, enrichment activities, arts and crafts, singing, dancing. I'm like a living cartoon character, so I did very well with dementia patients. I can't control my face, and it's very overly expressive. But one, it was really nice, basically having like 100 grandparents.
Oh, I love that.
I joked on Facebook. I'm like, I feel like I have the power of 100 nanas and papas.
Ah.
So they're always very happy to see you. How you doing today? Um, and it was a good environment for me because one, I really love feeling helpful, and
Mm.
most of them, I have to say most because definitely not all, but most of them are very happy to have help and very appreciative, and many of them are very inquisitive about who you are, and they,
Mhm.
if I tell somebody I'm working on a drawing, they'll come back next week and say, "Did you finish your drawing?" And like I hadn't had that, I hadn't
Ah,
really had that.
accountability. Yeah.
Well, not just that, but like just interest, like
Yeah.
my parents weren't really ever that they didn't understand
Mm.
computers, they didn't understand me.
Yeah.
So they weren't very interested in like what I was doing most of my life.
Mm.
They were far more into my more typical siblings activities. I was kind of the black sheep weirdo, like, why? Like I'm just showing my dad like a picture of a dragon that I drew that I'm super proud of, and he's like, "Why can't you draw normal stuff like flowers?"
Oh.
Now all I do is flowers, so take that, dad.
And dragons are totally normal. I mean, hello.
Right, right. Uh
Ah, oh god, yeah.
no, you. But
Ah,
that was a really good experience for me. And
yeah.
but one of the things that I also did is take care of people who were dying and people who had extremely advanced dementia. And so when you're taking care of these people who they can't talk anymore, maybe they, in some cases they're completely nonverbal, sometimes they have a little bit of language. Sometimes the only way they can communicate with you is by smiling.
Mhm.
So you can tell they're still experiencing pleasure, but they can't ask for the things they need. You have to read their body language and figure that out for
Mm.
yourself.
Wow.
There were people that would become agitated. I love to sing. I'm not that great at it, but I still love doing it.
Yeah.
And so I had a few people that I cared for that were not nonverbal, but they had no use of language. So they either would just blurt out random things or gibberish.
Mhm.
And so sometimes they would become agitated while I'm getting them ready for bed or something like that. And I found that even though I'm not very good at it, like I could sing to them. And
Mhm.
sometimes if they knew the song, they would kind of hum along,
Oh.
or they would be eased, like it would
Mm.
calm them down. It would have like a calming effect.
Yeah.
I took care of a woman that was almost entirely blind. So she would want to kind of paw at my face, and she could feel if I was smiling or laughing. And then
Mhm.
she would smile. And so in some ways it was almost kind of mutual, because here's this autistic person who's learning how to anticipate other people's needs
Yeah.
and be more mindful of other people, and kind of overcome that mind blindness. And here are these people with dementia who've gone the other way. They probably had these facilities when they were less advanced, and now they've
Mm.
lost some of them, and so we're kind of meeting each other halfway. And
Wow.
it was just a really profound experience for me.
Mhm.
And then also the act of, again, taking care of people who are dying. So you kind of have a more thorough appreciation for what actually matters in life.
Mhm.
So I tend to not sweat the
Yeah.
small stuff, like nobody who's dying is worried about that guy
Yeah.
who cut them off in traffic 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
So you develop an appreciation, or more of an appreciation, for what actually matters
Mhm.
and the temporary nature of life itself.
Wow.
And I'm
Yeah.
actually hoping to get my CNA license, and
What
go
does
into
that mean? Sorry.
so CNA is a certified nursing assistant.
Okay.
So it's typically a license that someone gets either when they're working in skilled nursing facilities like a nursing home. It's basically what I was doing before. Like, you don't have to have an actual license to just help someone use the toilet,
Mhm.
but the license shows that you've had more formal training. You get first aid training, CPR. So I'd like to get my CNA license and go into hospice work part time.
Mhm. Mhm.
One, the extra income is nice, but not strictly something that I would have to have in the long term. But personally, I found this work very rewarding.
Mm.
And as someone that has experienced a lot of loss in my life, like I said, I have very little living family.
Mhm.
I was intimately involved in my mother's death. My father committed suicide a few years later. I had pet rats for a number of years, which I don't know if you know anything about rats, but they're kind of like little puppies that only live a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
You get very attached to them. They're very smart, they're affectionate little
Mm.
animals. And I had 25 of them over 10 years, and
Wow.
I had to make the decision when to let a lot of them go. And there were plenty of them that I was waking up every 4 hours to feed baby food to,
Mhm.
in their last few days. And so I'm just someone that is really comfortable with death, and that experience of helping people and that interaction I felt was something that was very good for me. I
Mhm.
miss it. And so I'm
Yeah.
hoping that, at least part-time, I can eventually get back to that when it's safe to do so, and I've been able to get a little more training, professional training, medical
Mm.
training. That's something that I want
Yeah.
to do, but that's been a very helpful experience for me and a really rewarding experience for me, and it's helped me work through some of the hurdles that have to do with my
Mm.
autism and socialization.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds really beautiful.
It
Oh.
is. I've drawn a few comics about my experiences working in the assisted
Mm.
living. Of course, I don't use names, and I change the way people look, to respect
Mhm.
people's privacy. But
Yeah.
I do intend to, in the future, publish a mini book that specifically focuses on illustrations of my experiences working in the care facilities for seniors, and
Mhm.
more specifically, my experiences caring for people with dementia, which I may not be able to return to in the capacity that I was before, because unfortunately, with the amount of work they give you, For me, I had a problem with becoming overstimulated, like
Ah.
if I was caring for 1 or 2 of them, it would be manageable, but when you
Mhm.
have, like, 5 or 6 people kind of pulling at your shirt and maybe
Oh,
yelling at
wow,
you
that sounds
and
overwhelming. Yeah.
yeah, and then maybe, like, a couple of them are high fall risk, so you can't,
Mm.
like, take your eyes off of them for too long because they'll try to get up out of their wheelchair and face plant on the floor.
Oh,
Uh,
dear. Yeah.
yeah, for
Wow.
me, it was a little too much, like, I could take care of them on a one-on-one level, I'm very good at it,
Mm.
or even just a couple, but,
Yeah.
the last facility I worked in was really, like, understaffed and, there were a few people in there that really weren't appropriate for the environment. They needed to be somewhere,
Mm. Yeah,
more,
yeah.
with more supervision.
Wow, yeah.
But other than that, it was a really rewarding experience for me, and I do plan
Mm.
on publishing some material that focuses on that. I think especially for the families of people afflicted with
Yeah.
this stuff,
Totally.
it's
Yeah.
helpful to be able to kind of see to find the happier moments and, like,
Mhm.
the kind of the joy. There is joy that you can find, in
Mhm.
these really depressing situations, and so that's something that I'm also kind of focusing on, or
Yeah.
it's a point of focus for me in my work going forward.
Totally. I mean, if you can find peace and wonder in those moments, then you're basically winning at life, aren't you? You know?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's that's who I am, and I honestly, like, it's a chicken and egg scenario, right? Like, am I this way because of what I've been through, or have I managed to get this far because I'm this way?
Mm.
And maybe I'll never know, and maybe it's a little of A and a little of B, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
tend to be a pretty positive person, and I tend to just kind of take things on the chin, and I may lick my wounds for a little bit, but I tend to not, you know, like I said at the beginning, like, I need to understand what's
Mm.
happening. But once
Yeah.
I've gotten to a place of understanding, then, we're good to go.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, I don't think I would have made it this far if I wasn't a fairly positive person in the long
Yeah,
run.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. God, that sounds like an amazing journey so far. Who knows where it'll lead
Oh,
next?
I know, right? I
Yeah.
really feel like I'm in uncharted waters right now.
Ah,
I'm
that is
just
so
kind of
relatable.
it's
Yeah.
just I'm just kinda taking things a day at a time and
Yeah.
not worrying too much about where things are going, and, I mentioned this on another podcast, but I've kind of been thumbing through the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, and I try to
Ah,
practice non-attachment
yeah.
and just, take things as they come, and if things leave me, they leave, and I just let them go, and,
Mhm.
it's a very in my opinion, it's a very good way to live.
Oh, yeah.
I I don't have very much. Fridge is
Mm.
kind of empty. I got some dents in my car, but, I those things are not I'm not starving, like, these things are not important to me. I
Yeah.
don't I everything I own is from the thrift shop or some kind of hand-me-down, and
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm not a materialistic person as long as I have enough to be
Hmm.
alive and, okay,
Yeah.
I need the air conditioning.
See, that's fair. You're like, yeah, yeah, needs acknowledging your needs is important,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, so, there's a couple little luxuries
Yeah.
people that know me, I like clothes. I buy used clothes almost exclusively, except for stuff that
Mhm.
would be kinda gross to buy used, like
Mm.
intimate items, but,
Yeah.
I own I own, like, over 100 jackets,
Wow.
because I really like dressing up when I do
Yeah.
shows and performances and things, and as
Mhm.
someone who's photographed a lot, you don't wanna be seen wearing the same things over and over.
Yeah, that's fair.
But,
Yeah.
so I have my vice. I like clothes, but I try to be thrifty and
Yeah, that's
ecologically
fair.
responsible
Especially
about
if you
it.
have a lot of them, yeah.
Oh,
I
I
feel
have
like
a
I'm a bit of a minimalist myself, and I like a simple life, like the more stuff you have, the more you have to store it and look after it and all that kind of thing. So I like having one of something I need and a bit more of some things I want. Yeah, but it's good to keep things simple, I find, for sure.
Well, I'm a
Yeah.
land of contrasts because day to day, I discovered when I was working in the assisted living facility, I really like scrub pants because they have like a billion pockets.
Yeah,
So
pockets. Oh my God,
right,
pockets.
pockets, yes. So I bought like 10 pairs of the same, like 10 identical pairs of black Dickies scrub pants, and that's like what I normally wear day to day. So if you saw me like grocery shopping day to day, I would look like only own like 1 or 2 pairs of clothes because I own 10
Yeah.
pairs of the same pants. So
Okay,
so
yeah.
I don't you have that choice paralysis, so I have this big rack of clothing, but I don't actually wear most of that stuff, like, day to day.
Mm,
It's all for, shows and performing. But
yeah,
so, yeah, land of contrasts. Yeah, so I
totally.
definitely understand the minimalism thing because day to day, that's kind of where I'm at, but I'm just not a
Hmm.
materialistic person. I just, I don't have any desire for the big fancy house. I don't own a television. I don't, I have a little tiny radio that I listen to public radio on classical music
Mm,
sometimes, and I just like
yeah.
I'm a really like I'm easy to please. I'm a simple person, and that's a good way to go through life.
Yeah, totally, totally. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing all you've shared.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying
Cool.
putting myself back out there again. It's been a while.
Yeah, yeah. It's nice to sort of go into this next phase. I feel like I'm very much entering this next phase of life for me. I don't know how to
I you
describe
know
it in any
I
other way.
I think
Yeah.
it's kind of a universal experience right now, at least for a lot of people.
Mm.
I think the last year of isolation has probably caused a lot of people to reevaluate a lot of things about
Mm.
their life. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that you or I or really anyone like hears a
Mm.
lot is that due to COVID-19 and
Mhm.
I know people are reevaluating their jobs and relationships. And
Yeah.
so I think that's probably right now not just for you or myself,
Mhm.
but there's a larger cultural kind of shift happening at the
Yeah,
moment.
totally. Like, and I feel like spiritual, energetic, awakening type stuff. I
Yeah,
feel that. Yeah, I do feel
yeah.
that.
I feel like I'm in some ways kind of riding on a larger wave.
Mm.
Something that's bigger than myself. Obviously, like
Yeah, totally.
in some ways, it almost feels like what I was trying to do a long time ago was just not the right time. Like this is the time
Mm.
now. Like that wasn't my
Yeah.
time before.
Yeah,
So we'll
totally.
see.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna make it.
Yay. Well, you're winning at being human, so there
Yeah.
you go. You
Right.
just do whatever the hell else you want.
Exactly. Exactly.
Ah, amazing. You can find out more details on the website at 50shadesofgender.com/Jin, which is JIN, where you can also read the transcript. And you can find Jin on their website, jinwicked.com, their online store on store.jinwicked.com, as well as on social media and YouTube. Thank you for listening to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. You can find us online at 50shadesofgender.com, on social media, and on YouTube. Again, if you'd like to support us, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender or buy us a coffee. Links are on the website. We hope you will listen again. Until then, stay curious and open minded.
I am agender.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I wasn't sure what
I love it. No,
I've
that's so
embarrassed
cool.
myself in record time.
No, you haven't. You're fine. This is brilliant. I love it.